So this next video is a little longer than the other ones. I wanted to spend some time talking about each of our sponsors. I think you'll find it very inspiring, the number of people that came together to make this project work for our kids at Katy High School. This was our dream diagram. I can remember back in 2018 when we were like thinking about what would be our greatest desire, what would we want if we could shoot for the moon kind of thing. And Miss Kelly Knight and I came up with this diagram for a grant we were writing. This is Highway 90, this is 1463. We wanted to take this whole corner, install some kind of trails and an outdoor classroom. The idea is for this prairie to be a place for kids to learn, to do lessons, to enjoy, to learn about Texas history, and also for it to be a usable concept in and of itself. How do prairie ecosystems, how could they help the Katy community? And we investigated that as well. So we started with the Katy Prairie Conservancy. They are a conservation organization that preserves prairie remnants, large and small. Pocket prairie can be as small as a bathtub, as large as and from there as large as you can imagine. And the Wildlife Habitat Federation. I don't know if you knew this, but only about 1% of prairie land that we used to have in the state of Texas is now still viable. The Wildlife Habitat Federation are the people that actually put the seed into the ground, do the tillage and all of that. These two pictures here are of the MD Anderson Prairie. They were responsible for helping with that project. Jim Willis is an interesting person. He's the chairman of the Wildlife Habitat Federation. He was a former rice farmer, and he was a rice farmer his whole life, and he just has this passion and belief that we are not making good use of our natural resources, the soil, all of it. And so he goes all over the state of Texas and converts pasture land and grazing land and farmland that has non-native species and is slowly but surely converting it to native prairie, which he calls ice cream for cows. So here's a picture of, this is on his barn in Cat Springs. Here's the foliage. This is the greenery above the ground. This is the ground. Look at those roots. These are actually plants taken out of the ground at his ranch. And here's that root system. Remember, we talked about in the last video about these roots being like a tropical rainforest underground. While we were working on a plan of how we were going to restore this area to native prairie, Black Bear Diner reached out to our school. They were building a new restaurant in Katy, and they reached out to the school and said, we'd really like to help you with a restoration, with an educational project, something that would benefit the kids, and maybe had some kind of relationship to Harvey. And this fit perfectly. They really did start the whole thing financially. They were the reason we were able to begin this process. We had to, have some money to hire the tillers and the different, equipment, just kind of the nuts and bolts of putting seed in the ground and doing this restoration. And so they really did help us with that. They are a conservation organization. They do lots of interesting projects all over the world. And so this is kind of something that they really have enjoyed participating in with us. While we started the project and things started to change, we got a lot of phone calls at City Hall, a lot of phone calls at admin and at the high school about, what's going on at Katy High School. So Keep Katy Beautiful came to us and said, we talked with them and we went to one of their board meetings and they're like, we really think we need to help you with some signage. So they partnered with Fast Signs and Keep Katy Beautiful combined together financially. Jess Washburn made the design for these signs. I think they're absolutely beautiful. And they put these signs in the ground. We're putting all of our sponsors here. I've got a whole bunch more decals I need to add this fall. And then this is our website where people can say, oh, what's going on at Katy High School? And they can look at that. So we'll really appreciate them doing that for us. Another thing we did at the very beginning of our project was we wanted to reach out to other conservation organizations. There's a conservation organization called Texan by Nature, bringing conservation and business together to protect what we love most about the Lone Star State. This organization was started by Laura Bush, and they we contacted them to apply for what's called the Conservation Wrangler Award. We did not receive the award, but they loved our project so much they called us personally at school and they said, "We really love your project. How can we help?" So the first thing they did is they made us a certified Texan by Nature site. So you can go onto their website and you can see Katy High School Native Prairie Project is on there. The second thing they did is we told them what our dream was and they got us in contact with a sponsor because that's kind of what they do. So the next email we got was from CMEX. CMEX reached out to us. We have an office. CMEX has an office in Katy. They're a world-renowned cement company, and they do conservation all over the world and in the state of Texas. And they have a prairie that they're also working on in Brenham. But they really love this project, and they basically said, "How can we help? What can we do to help you?" So we talked with them a lot about planning the trails. Do we want crushed granite? Do we want, how do we want it to be mulched? How are we going to do this? We finally settled on the mulch because we weren't sure if the trails that we laid down, if those would be permanent. So they paid for everything. They bought the mulch, they did the deliveries, they did everything. We had 80 kids lay 2 trucks full of mulch in 3 hours. It was pretty incredible. The second round of mulch, we had gotten a grant from the Lexus Eco Challenge. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. We used part of that grant to pay for more mulch. And M&M Landscaping came. We bought with another grant that we had some landscape fabric, and they laid it all for us. They brought a whole crew out there, and they did all of that so that when we laid the mulch the second time, it would last longer, and it really has made a huge difference. So we're really grateful for that. Also, another thing that we needed for our kids was tools. The district had an older shed that nobody was using, so they moved it over, kind of over where the cafeteria is, and they gave us this shed. And the Friendship Garden Club of Katy had us for a meeting around Christmas time, and they decided to sort of adopt this project and our students as their project for their Christmas project. This is a picture of students. They brought over wheelbarrows and wagons and sprinklers and some tools and filled the shed with those things, which we've used many, many times. At the same time, we found out we had applied for what was called the Science Teachers Association of Texas Innovation Award. It's a brand new award. They recognized 4 projects in the state of Texas for innovative science teaching, and we were one of those schools. So we took some of the funds from this grant and combined it with this donation, and we have a shed filled with tools. We have about 10 to 12 of everything. And what that does is it allows teachers to go out there, spread the kids out on the prairie, and they can work out there. Before that, I was bringing tools from home, and the kids were bringing tools from home. We're so grateful for this donation. Now we also bought some really cool soil study equipment that students are going to be able to use in the coming year that's actually literature quality, and I can't wait to do that. That's going to be really exciting. Another thing that the Wildlife Habitat Federation suggested was that in addition to seed, which is where most of the plants that you see in the prairie come from, that we have some mature plants. So we applied for a grant from the Katy ISD Education Foundation, and we were able to buy 350 plants, prairie plants. They're from Morningstar Prairie Plants. Mark Morgenstern gets all of his plants from this area, and he grows them on his property. We brought all 350 plants. The kids came out. We had over 200 environmental science kids that went out there and planted. We joined with the work-based learning students. They came out and helped us. It was an amazing day. We had about 8 volunteers from the Katy Prairie Conservancy. Everybody, they were teaching the kids how to put the plants in the ground. All of these people, all of these organizations coming together for this educational experience. I also have to say about Ray Woolman came out and brought us 80 blue bonnet plants, which the kids were so excited about. Planted them all along the edges of the prairie. I can't wait to see what they'll look like next year. We also had a couple group of students that applied for awards and grants on their own. So the first group is a group of 9 students who applied for what's called the Lexus Eco Challenge. This is a challenge that invites students to tackle an environmental issue in their community, create and submit an action plan, the results, and compete nationally. And that's what they did. They targeted or kind of looked at how can we use the prairie or prairie plants in a city's green spaces to mitigate flooding and drought. They contacted local, the Harris County Flood Control District. They talked to experts in the field. Jaime Gonzalez, he used to be in the Katy Prairie Conservancy. He helped them. And they were featured in an article in the Houston Chronicle about their efforts, and they were one of 16 finalists in this challenge. This is hugely prestigious. They all received some scholarship money, and some of the also a bit of the grant went to the school itself. So that's really exciting. Another group of students went through EcoRise, and they applied for a grant themselves, all by themselves. And this is a really neat thing because what EcoRise tries to do is to get students to engage in the process that makes change. And writing a grant is a tool that they can use at any time. So they wrote the grant. The grant had to go before the EcoRise peer review committee, and then it was accepted. And they will be giving us the resources of funding to put in some trash cans into the prairie that they can use for some of the litter that's out there. That will help a little bit with that problem. All of our seeds were donated to us by all of these organizations. Bamert Seed, USDA, Texas Rice, and Turner Seed Company. All of them helped us figure out what seeds to plant, what species to plant, how to plant them. And then they are also consulting with us even now about, we just had a consultation with one of the reps from Wildlife Habitat Federation, who's also from Bamert Seed Company, and he kind of gave us a health wellness check on how our plants are doing. So that was, all of our seeds were donated by organizations. So if you look at our plan, we really have everything except our outdoor classroom. And Cane Island came to us, it was probably like around the beginning of the year actually, and said, we really want to help with this. And so they have already purchased, we're actually in the process of buying it. It's they've donated the finances, and we're waiting for them to be shipped to the school, of tables, of these outdoor tables and seating for 32 students out in the prairie. It will go under the oak tree. And so people can bring their classes out there. If people from the community want to go out there and have lunch, there'll be a place to sit. And so it's just a really, I hope you've enjoyed seeing how your community, how the Katy community has come together to take care of something really cool for our students.